Well, it is time now for Scoop, our weekly conversation on international media and the political and economic headwinds confronting the industry. We look at who shapes a narrative, explore journalistic ethics, and ask the reporters the difficult questions. With trust in the press at a nadir, it's a critical eye on a critical profession. There's a lot of hot air on mainstream media as France suffered its most intense heat wave ever, days into the extreme weather, and what began as commendable coverage deteriorated. Viewers hoping for an insightful debate about how to confront climate change were often disappointed. This is how LCE's Luc Ferry responded to a clip of France's environment minister criticizing air conditioning as a solution to climate change.
Attention, et cette dame dit des bêtises qui sont grosses comme elle.
D'accord, les métiers extérieurs, Luc Ferry.
Enfin écoutez, franchement, mon père s'est évadé 4 fois des camps nazis. Il faisait très chaud aussi, surtout dans le four qu'on avait préparé pour lui. Bon.
Christophe Cassou is a high-profile climatologist and has written reports for the UN's Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change, or GIEC, as they say in French. When he was a guest on the nation's most-watched news channel, BFM TV's own commentator blamed the scientific community for not being persuasive enough about the risks of climate change. Take a look.
Vous n'avez pas été très convaincant.
Attendez.
Or, tous les discours qu'on a entendus, c'était des discours qui étaient très abstraits. C'était 2 degrés de réchauffement climatique à l'horizon 2100.
Bah, c'est pas très abstrait, ça, je trouve. Hein.
Bah, si.
Franchement, je pense que c'est assez honteux ce que vous venez de dire là. De rejeter la responsabilité sur les scientifiques
Non, c'est pas
dans la
rejeter la
communication.
responsabilité.
Attendez, je vous ai laissé terminer. De rejeter la responsabilité sur une mauvaise communication de la part du scientifique, c'est inadmissible. Les rapports sont là. Le GIEC est là. Ce qu'on a toujours demandé, ce sont des cartes de vulnérabilité. Ces cartes de vulnérabilité, elles se font dans d'autres pays, elles ne se font pas en France. Pourquoi? Volonté politique.
In the 48 hours after that appearance, climatologist Cassou was harassed online, with even a far-right lawmaker calling him a dictator. The subject of climate change in France, like in many other countries, has long been politicized. During this heat wave, though, even air conditioning became a battleground line about which party you're a member of. This video by Blast, a left-wing online media, put together this montage.
Faut-il climatiser nos vies, nos écoles, nos hôpitaux, nos maisons, nos appartements? La clim est-elle la solution?
Pour ou contre la clim?
Faut-il climatiser ou non? Le débat devient politique.
Je suis élue présidente de la République, je mettrai en place un plan massif de climatisation.
And this is very important, as France recorded at least 2,000 deaths, more than expected during the heat wave, a figure that's expected to rise as more data comes in. Now, joining me on the set are France 24's very own Valerie Dekimpe, our environment editor. Hello to you, Valerie. And across from her is Peter O'Brien, technology editor. Valerie, I want to begin with you. First of all, these clips were not indicative of all media coverage in France. I pulled these clips for a reason. But when you saw media coverage, what did you make of it? Was it sophisticated? Was it good? Or was it bad?
I mean, some of it was good. Some of it was obviously really ugly. But I think what stood out to me is the fact that pretty much all media outlets from across the board made the heat wave their main story for over a week. And I think that led to, quite a rich panel of people, coming on news sets and newspapers talking about the heat wave, not just your usual panel of scientists and politicians, but you had sociologists, political scientists, you had real estate experts, all, discussing the heat wave, the consequences of the climate crisis within their own angles and areas of expertise. And I think that gave, quite a, expanded the debate. People talking about social inequality, taxing the super rich, housing regulations, housing policy. And so that gave it a lot of depth to the debate, even though we had, of course, you still have a lot of misinformation on French TV, of course.
So some activists saying there are about 13 different things on a standard week, and that was much more so during this heat wave. Peter, you work in a domain, technology, where one major question is the literacy of the public. How do you dumb things down? Because climate change is very difficult, as is technology. How do we present material in a way that's easy for the audience to follow, but also is a meaningful conversation?
Well, I was thinking about how
I could possibly come up with a new angle coming in off the back of the worst part of the heat wave last week. And I thought, well, you know what we've not heard at all is actually how does the main or one of the main solutions to the effects of the heat, air conditioning, how does it work? Because you're seeing so much politicized debate around it, but actually people don't necessarily understand why it works and why it's effective at cooling down
misconceptions about it too.
Rooms. So I was like, well, when I think about covering tech in general, I think how can we break this down to the simplest possible, physics of what we're talking about, and then maybe people will understand and people will cool their heads slightly when it comes to thinking about things. I think that's a key tool that we have, is just to go back to basics. And when you do that, you also start to realize that actually some things might have changed. Some technologies might have evolved, some parts of policy that might have evolved. And the problem is when these news stories start to hit, then people start to fall back on kind of preconceived ideas that they've had for 10, 20 years, especially people sat around, news desks like this one. And that's what we need to challenge.
And Valerie, your position on this is that air conditioning is crucial. It's important. It can be life-saving. We have to remind our audience that a couple of decades ago, 15,000 people died during a heat wave. But it's not a silver bullet, especially if we overlook tackling climate change.
Right. I mean, I think the whole debate was very much politicized, but the irony, I think, is that pretty much everyone, across the political spectrum agreed on the fact that we need more air conditioning. I mean, even from the far right, of course, they want to have a massive plan of more AC units, but even the Green Party, they have acknowledged, yes, we do need more AC units in schools and hospitals and so on. So even though pretty much everyone agrees on the fact that we need more of it, what's been very problematic, I think, is the fact that it's been presented as a solution, but I think it's more of a technological fix. It's more one tool within the toolkit of things that we can do and that we need to do to cope with the immediate effects, but it's not adaptation. And this word that we always use in climate policy and environment is adaptation. And actually the French have quite an interesting term to describe wrong solutions. It's called maladaptation. So adaptation is adaptation and mal is bad. So essentially like bad adaptation. So like a wrong solution to a problem. And so equating AC, more air conditioning, to systemic change is what's been quite wrong about this whole discussion.
I would say that the politicians on the Green side and the far left, they've come round to that. But when this kicked off, we heard those very strong statements from, for example, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, going on these tirades about air conditioning. Since then, he's toned it down. Yeah. So has the environment minister. And that shows that in real time, the last couple of weeks, public opinion is changing about AC, including on that side of the political
That clip we played of Christophe Cassou, also, it was selectively edited for social media, and it showed him saying air conditioning is not a solution. And that's when he got harassed online. But if you listen to the full clip and the context, he says, we need air conditioning, but it's not a solution. And this is one of those things where I think, getting to what you're saying, it's like a Band-Aid on something, right, but it doesn't remove the threat of what hurts you in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's, to me, the real danger, perhaps, of having, believing that AC units are the solution is also the fact that we are, it's reassuring, it's comforting to say, to see that there's actually something that can be done tomorrow or very quickly and very easily to cope with the heat. And the reality is that adaptation is going to take a lot of, decades and years. It does take a lot of money. And so you have this big, fat challenge and problem, which is climate change. And so it is comforting, reassuring for many people to see that there's something that we can do immediately now. But we also need to face the reality, and we cannot live in denial. And my fear is that believing that, we need to install more AC units and that will be the solution will mean, business as usual, and that we can shield ourselves from the reality of climate change. And there's also this question of social, inequality and social justice. I mean, we might as well be able to install AC units in hospitals and schools and many places, around cities. But what if we all started having AC, and so you have this issue of urban heat rising as a result of AC units. People still need to, kids still need to walk to school. You have construction workers working outside. You have police officers. You have a bunch of people who have different jobs from what we do here in the newsroom in the comfort of AC. And so it does raise very difficult and uncomfortable questions about social justice as well.
Yeah, plus, Peter, a lot of the people who are most vulnerable, they might be living on the higher floors of the apartment building, underneath the roofs. Paris is a beautiful city. It has these old buildings. They're not really lending themselves to modernization and air conditioning either.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's two things. One, people need it, and you can see that from these pictures we saw of people rushing to Lidl yesterday to buy AC in their masses. As soon as it was advertised as being cheaper or even available at all, because it's been unavailable. It's been out of stock everywhere in France. So as soon as Lidl advertised that there's going to be AC, for 200 euros, people were literally, you can see here in the footage, rushing into the shops to buy it. People need it, and they recognize that it is a cost-effective way to save them from extreme heat.
Is the media responsible for some of that hysteria, though, from covering it the way they
Possibly social media. I mean, these are little advertisements that seem to go out on the internet, on TV. But for me, that just proves how much people need this. They wouldn't be doing these insane things and tackling each other to get an AC or a fan if they didn't need it. I think there is where you see...
Just to jump in, it is definitely important. People definitely do need it. But I just want to press you on that point. Consider Black Friday in America. I don't think people are storming the stores either. Part of this is consumerism, and part of this is being told that the resources are going to run out.
I think it's from suffering for over a week in extreme heat in these kind of flats that you're talking about, poorly insulated flats. The building stock is not prepared in cities and near cities. I don't think this is a kind of craze. I think people are literally suffering and actually dying in their thousands. And I don't see why we need to conflate the climate change debate with the AC debate at all, right? Climate change is one thing. Heating cities and making livable cities, is another thing. And in terms of aircon, we have it in our cars already. We have similar refrigerant technology in our fridges. There are other things at home that use a lot of electricity and energy, washing machines. So why aren't we telling people to get rid of these rather than saying you can't have AC? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Valerie, one of the things that I worry about in regards to climate change and the media's attention to it is I feel like any time the heat wave ends, we move on. Anytime it starts to rain, we move on until the next report comes out or until the next weather event. And that gets us into this sort of tired repetition of asking the same questions and getting the same answers, but not really building a sense of urgency or a sense of change.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question because that's what we face, at the environment desk. We work on environment stories and climate stories pretty, the whole year, every single week. And so you need to keep people interested. And I think what's become crucial now is to report a lot more on solutions and concrete examples of solutions. Because if you take the heat wave as an example, we've been talking a lot about adding more green spaces, renovating buildings and doing, things that sound quite vague. And as opposed to installing more AC units. But I think, and I've been seeing quite a lot of reports on French TV, which I think have been quite good and showing very concrete examples of people doing things in their own level, not just waiting for the government to do things. So, for example, a building in Montpellier, an apartment complex that has a set of which was actually designed to beat the heat. You had a school in the south of France as well, adding very wide fans with very long blades to beat the heat, or hiring people at night, for example, to come over and open the blinds and windows for the classrooms to cool down. So a bunch of things that we need more concrete examples, and we need those concrete examples for two reasons. One, because you show people that things that you can actually do things can be done, and you can start small. It doesn't have to be like this massive plan. You can start small.
What we call solutions-based reporting. We have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Valerie. Peter, thank you as well. That brings us to our quote of the week, and it comes from cartoonist Patrick Chapat. His piece here has a radio presenter saying, "Enjoy the heat wave with the gas crisis. You'll freeze to death this winter." That's it for this edition. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to France 24.